Mayor Brown.
Here. Okay. There. Okay, they're on now. Thank you. Okay. We will begin with presentations. The first is Domestic Violence Awareness Proclamation. Is there anyone in the audience? Okay, excellent. Okay, proclamation recognizing October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, 2018. Whereas anyone can become a victim of domestic violence regardless of age, sex, ability, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, or religion. Whereas on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States, the equivalent of more than 10 million women and men per year. And whereas approximately 50% of older adults with dementia are mistreated or abused, whereas the economic cost of intimate partner violence alone exceeds $8.3 billion per year, whereas between 21 and 60% of victims of intimate partner violence lose their jobs due to reasons stemming from the abuse, whereas 50% of youth reporting dating violence and rape also report attempting suicide, whereas children who've experienced domestic violence often meet the diagnostic criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and the effects on their brain are similar to those experienced by combat veterans. And whereas a study of intimate partner homicides found that 20% of victims were not the intimate partners themselves, but family members, friends, neighbors, persons who intervene, law enforcement responders, or bystanders. Whereas every member of our community can play a role in preventing domestic violence, observing October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month provides an excellent opportunity to increase awareness of domestic violence and therefore empower the community to prevent domestic violence and to take meaningful action to break this cycle of abuse. Domestic Violence Awareness Month is also a yearly reminder of the importance of organizations like Safe Place to provide critical services such as free legal advocacy, counseling, emergency shelter, and for victims of domestic and their dependent children. Therefore, be proclaimed that on behalf of all the members of the Albion City Council and the residents of City Albion, the month of October is declared Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we urge our community to work together to end domestic violence in Albion. Would you like to have a word?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to share a little bit about domestic violence with the community. My name is Laura Adi. I'm with Safe Place, and I'm joined by Maggie Honecker, who's also with Safe Place. I'd like to give a few minutes, actually, to this young lady here to share who she is and why the chambers are full tonight so that you can learn of some opportunities to get involved and be a part of the change to end domestic violence.
Good evening. My name is Paige Malma. I'm the Vice President of Philanthropy for Alpha Chi Omega at Albion College. Next week on Tuesday, October 9th, we're going to hold Walk a Mile in Their Shoes, which is a demonstration where students on campus, they can walk around and learn about what domestic violence is and the signs and symptoms, as well as get help. It's a great opportunity for college students to understand what a healthy relationship is versus what an unhealthy relationship is, and we're so lucky to be working with Safe Place in order to put this event on. We love to open this up to the community as well. If anyone would like to attend, it's on October 9th at 7 o'clock on the quad at Albion College. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank
you. Next up, we have a presentation on one of the statewide November ballot issue proposals from Voters Not Politicians.
I'm not sure which way to face here.
Face direct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor Brown and members of the Albion City Council. I thank you so much for allowing this time to talk with you. I live just north of Parma. I'm a retired teacher, and I really like being retired. I'm not an outgoing person, so I would much rather be at home reading a book, doing something a little more quiet. But I'm out speaking about Proposal 2 for two reasons. One, to make sure that people know about the damage done to our democracy by gerrymandering, and two, to energize voters to spread the word so this proposal will pass on November 6th. I'm part of a grassroots movement, Voters Not Politicians. Last fall, we collected over 425,000 signatures to place our initiative on the ballot. How many in our audience were at a farmer's market or out getting, anybody out here collect signatures? Or here we go, very good. So take note of that. If there are questions that I don't answer during my presentation, here's another gentleman that can answer questions for you. Let's look at Gerrymandering 101 to review this issue. Gerrymandering is when partisans draw district lines to benefit themselves and their political party. The result is that elections are manipulated and politicians are choosing their voters rather than allowing voters to choose their representatives. Politicians then only need to listen to a very small segment of their base, of their party, the people who vote in primary elections. So then voters begin to feel that their voice doesn't count and they don't participate in the political process. So here's how gerrymandering works. Every 10 years after the census, voting maps for the state legislature and for our U.S. House districts have to be redrawn because people have moved or have died or more people have become eligible to vote. So we need to make sure that there is equal population in every district. And in Michigan's current system, it's the legislature's job to draw the new voting maps. But here and in other states where this task is in the hands of politicians, they work behind closed doors. And you're probably not surprised to know that whichever party has the majority will draw the lines so they keep the majority. Once district lines are drawn unfairly, the impact can last for a decade or more. Now, gerrymandering has been going on for a long time, but technology has made it really easy to do this. We have a secret ballot. Still, people don't know how you vote, but there's lots of information about us out there that's freely available through big data. And once a few important details are known about you and your neighbors, data analysts can make a pretty good guess about how you're going to vote. And they use software programs to determine where to draw the lines to favor one party over the other. So here's a little illustration of how gerrymandering is done. This diagram represents an area divided between the green and the yellow voters, 25 yellow and 24 green. And if they were to draw districts that fairly represent the voters in the area, there should be probably 3 green seats and 4 yellow seats. But if politicians start packing and cracking, the green politicians might pack all the yellow voters into one district and give up that seat to the opposition, and then their next move is to draw the lines so that yellow voters are in the minority in all the other districts. By packing yellow voters into one district and cracking the rest among the other districts, they now have an advantage of 6-1, even though there are actually fewer green voters. And the yellow politicians can do the same thing. Now, in the next slide, nobody has moved, but this time the yellow politicians very creatively pack all the green voters in one district. And then again, by cracking the other green voters among the other districts, they now have a 6-1 advantage. Now, that crazy green district looks a lot like our Michigan 14th in the metro area. In this picture, the picture at the bottom of the screen shows that the traffic lights and the photographer are in the 14th district, but all the land around them is in the 11th. And if you look at that black arrow, you can see that the community of Farmington has just been chopped out of that district entirely. The next slide shows how the districts in the Detroit area have been configured to wrap around each other. And I think that picture really tells the story here. We need to emphasize that both parties gerrymander. The Democrats were in the majority in the 70s and 80s, and if you go back and look at those years, you can see that although the popular vote was almost evenly divided, the districts were drawn to favor the party in the majority. The Brennan Center for Justice identifies Michigan as one of the most extremely gerrymandered states in Congress in 2016. Now, my own district, which used to be Albion's district as well, is an example of another tactic called kidnapping. Bob LeBrandt, who engineered the redistricting after the 2010 census, explained that the 7th district had been going back and forth a bit. So when Tim Walberg won the seat and redistricting was done in 2010, Calhoun County was moved to the 3rd district, which LeBrandt explained was the second most Republican district in the state. This took 2 of Walberg's former opponents, Republican Joe Schwartz and Democrat Mark Schauer, both residents of Battle Creek, out of contention for this seat. So when you draw the lines around an opponent's home so they can't run against you, that's called kidnapping. And incidentally, Joe Schwartz, our former representative, is in favor of this ballot initiative, and he does presentations on behalf of VNP. So what can we do about it? If the process has been corrupted, we need to change the process. Proposal 2 will take the tools of gerrymandering away from the legislature entirely and create a commission of 13 voters to take on the task of redistricting. Political insiders are not eligible to be on the commission. Our amendment proposes a process that is designed to be fair, impartial, and transparent by creating an independent commission which gives the power back to the voters. In your board packet, you were provided with the 100-word summary of our proposal, which will appear on the ballot, and there's the second part of that. And those of you in the audience, I have some of those available here if you'd like to pick one up after the meeting. And you also have the complete policy, and you should also have an overview graphic that describes how the commissioners will be selected. Now, it doesn't look exactly like the one on the slide, but the process is designed to bring in a diverse pool of applicants. First, the Secretary of State will send out 10,000 applications to voters in all areas of Michigan, representing all ethnicities. Voters who do not receive an invitation can submit an application online. Then the Secretary of State reviews the applications to make sure that all of those in the pool are registered voters who are not political insiders. Then they go through a statistical weighting process to make sure that all areas of Michigan and different racial and ethnic groups are represented among the applicants. 200 applications are randomly drawn using this weighting process, and then the majority and minority leaders from the Michigan House and Senate are allowed up to 5 strikes each, as in jury selection. The remaining applications are sorted into Democratic, Republican, and unaffiliated pools, and commission members are randomly drawn from these pools. The commission will be made up of 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and 5 voters not affiliated with either party. Now, this proposal, we believe, is more fair than our current system because the people drawing the lines cannot do so to benefit themselves or one party. It is impartial because maps must be drawn through compromise. 7 of the 13 commissioners must approve a set of maps, but in order for approval to occur, at least 2 commissioners from each group must approve the maps. Without this compromise, the maps are not adopted, even if 7 commissioners are in favor. It will no longer be permitted for one political party to impose its will on the other. And not only that, but the voices of independent voters will be included in this process. The proposed system is much more transparent than the current process. The new system will require at least 10 public meetings throughout the state to gather input and explain the process, and then 5 more public meetings once the maps are prepared. All business must be conducted in public, and you as a voter will have input and access to all the data and information used by the commission to make its decision. And finally, maps cannot provide a disproportionate advantage to a political party and cannot favor or disfavor an incumbent elected official or candidate. The commission must follow strict criteria to create districts with equal population, which comply with the Voting Rights Act, take into account communities of interest, are compact and contiguous, and respect county, city, and township boundaries. Now, as we go door to door talking to voters, we're finding that this is the most popular proposal that no one has ever heard of. Once we explained the plan, everyone likes the idea very much, but very few people knew anything about it before talking to us. So we appreciate that you're studying this proposal. Your support can help us get this word out to voters, and I just need to know what questions you might have for me that I can answer.
Well, thank you for being here. Are there any questions from council this evening? Well, thank you. It's an important issue. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll have under presentations, item C, presentation about another statewide ballot proposal. It's called Promote the Vote, and it's proposal number 3. Yeah.
Hello and good evening, Honorable Mayor and all council members. My name is Stephanie Moore. I'm actually from Kalamazoo. I serve as the chairperson of the Kalamazoo County Board of Commissioners. However, I'm here tonight representing the Michigan ACLU and the Promote the Vote campaign. I did have a really pretty PowerPoint presentation, but we don't have it, and that's okay. I think we can get through this without it. If it's okay, Mayor, if I can give you all just a couple of these handouts. Pretty busy agenda tonight, so I won't keep up too much of your time. I am approaching you tonight. I know that it's on your agenda for consideration, proposal number 3, which is the Promote the Vote language. And really, to sum it all up, it's really about expanding the right to vote for individuals so that they have access, opportunity, and ease of voting here in Michigan. Basically, the tenets are to protect the right to a secret ballot, to be able to ensure military service members and overseas folks that are deployed, active, can have access to their ballots in a timely manner, be able to complete them and return them back to their local jurisdiction so that their vote can be counted. Also to provide voters with the options to vote straight party if that's what they desire, and to automatically register citizens at the Secretary of State. So if you're going in to renew your license, to get a photo ID, if you need to get any other business done at the Secretary of State, you would automatically become registered to vote unless you say to the clerk you do not want to be registered. And it will also allow citizens to register to vote anytime with the proof of residency. So anytime you can show your address, even if you do not have a photo ID, if you can prove your residency, you can register anywhere to vote, basically. And we know motor voter is one of the most common ways of people registering to vote. And it also ensures the accuracy and integrity of elections by auditing our election results. We all know that sometimes elections come down to just one vote, and sometimes the machines, the operation and administration of our elections determines those votes and those votes being counted. So this is really an expansion of our current voting system. It's nonpartisan. It's not to promote a party or a individual, but just to give ease and access to every citizen, every registered voter to be able to vote. Almost 92 million eligible Americans did not vote in the 26th presidential election. 2.8 million Michiganders of voting age did not vote in the 2016 presidential election. And Michigan has some of the most restrictive voting systems created to create barriers to voter participation. And we believe that this ballot proposal, number 3, will actually give more ease and access to the voting system. We know that Michigan and Mississippi are the only 2 states that have not adopted any form that increases access to the ballot. 36 states, including D.C., have adopted at least 3 or more voting reforms. So we know that people are struggling. We know that in order to get real change and not chump change in our community, we got to make sure that everyone that is of voting age is educated, empowered, and have access to the voting polls. And so with that, I do want to, if you have any questions for me, but hope that you would take into consideration to vote to approve and to support the resolution for Proposal 3.
I do have one question.
Yes.
And you may have said it, so I apologize if you covered it. But absentee ballots.
Yes.
Does that expand the reasons why that can be requested?
Actually, it removes the reasons.
Okay.
So if you have, for any reason, you want to vote absentee ballot, I was just meeting with a young man who's a retired disabled veteran. And he just, from PTSD and everything else, just did not want to go into a voting poll. But yet he didn't want to have to sit there and go over his medical information with a clerk just to get an absentee ballot. So to be able to give people, they don't have to go through reasons and judgments to be able to vote. This allows people to participate in the privacy of their own home. They can even have access in the way that they want to in terms of assistance with their ballot. But yes, it definitely eases absentee voter participation.
Are there any further questions this evening from council? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to public hearings. There's one item under public hearing, request approval to establish industrial development district for Minerals Technologies, Inc. It's formerly American Celluloid Company. It's on the Harvard site. So I'm going to open up the public hearing. Are there any comments this evening from the public on this request? Public hearing is closed. I'd entertain a motion to approve this from the council. Is there a motion? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Amy DePraise from the Albion Economic Development Corporation.
Good evening. Before you is a request for an industrial development district. This one is slightly confusing, and it's probably the first one that a lot of you have seen. So an IDD district has to be established prior to a tax abatement being approved. What you're approving today is just the district. It's just the lines within the investment can happen. So it doesn't give them an automatic tax break. You'll be seeing their tax abatement application and considering that hopefully next council agenda. But this is for American Colloid. They operate locally out of Minerals Technology. They have been at risk of closure. Their structure is at the end of life, and they were looking at options to either relocate that or rebuild. And we've been working with them for about a year now. And at several different times, it looked like it was going to be Albion, and at several different times, it looked like they were going elsewhere. So I can tell you that through this process, I was never really positive. At the rate they're going right now, they are choosing Albion. They're choosing to rebuild that structure. So it will be I don't want to quote the investment. You'll get that next agenda. But it's a considerable investment, and it will retain the employees that they have. Part of that deal is also they have worked out an acquisition of part of that property from the land bank. So if you remember, they're located on Harvard, which is owned by the land bank. So they lease that property, and they're also going to acquire a portion of it for long-term footprint. So this not only sets the district for their current location, all of Harvard, but it also includes that acquired land. So whatever they do in the future, you can support with tax abatements.
Are there any questions from council? Councilmember Barnes.
I would just like to know your recommendation, Amy.
I would definitely support it, and my board will be entertaining the support for the full abatement on Thursday this week. So I would anticipate the board will approve that support too.
Councilmember Barnes.
From a law enforcement standpoint, I would like to get a recommendation from the chief. Because of marijuana.
No, this is different. No. So to use that going as a launching pad. So when we were discussing sites in the industrial park, which are part of the TIFA, there was a breakdown that you had created about how the taxes are divvied up. Do you have a rough sense of how that works in an IDD?
The IDD doesn't change the way the taxes are done at all.
Okay.
What it does is allows the company to submit a request for a 198, a property tax abatement.
Okay.
And that's a 50% change. Now, there has been confusion in the past that this company was not paying taxes because they're on leased property that's owned by the land bank, and they actually do pay personal property and real property taxes. So they're supporting our services.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council? Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Seeing no further comments, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Lawler?
Yes.
Spicer?
Yes.
French? And Mayor Brown.
Yes, we've adopted or approved the establishment of the Industrial Development District for the listed company. We'll move on to public comments. Persons addressing the City Council, we ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes and to agenda items only. We ask that you observe proper decorum. Please state your name and address. Is there any public comment this evening?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Bob Dunklin, and I come before you tonight from the Albion branch of the NAACP. We ask that you please support the two ballot proposals, Proposal 2 and Proposal 3. The NAACP throughout this community and throughout this country have been fighting for voting rights for over 109 years. I think this is a great opportunity for the state of Michigan to clear up some of the things that has been happening here in Michigan. Hopefully, to stop depressing the votes here in Michigan. So please, we ask you to support the resolution, Proposal 2 and 3. And I share with you on October the 25th, ACLU and Stapleton will be back in this community. We will be put on a Know Your Rights, Know Your Voting Rights. It will be held at the Marriott Hotel. The time is 6 to 8. So please come out and support. If any time you have any questions about either of those proposals, you can contact the Albion branch of the NAACP. Thank you.
Nydia Wolf, 409 Irwin Ave. I am here because I was surprised at the agenda. There are proposals on there that it appears that the council is setting precedents for. My comments pertain to agenda item 2018-22 and proposal 3. It was surprising to me because in August or before August, the council was not interested in supporting the Albion Recreation Millage proposal, but now they are going on record as agreeing with these proposals. The resolution for 2018-22 begins, whereas the citizens of Michigan deserve a fair, fully transparent, and impartial process. Yet we should change that to, whereas the citizens of Albion deserve a fair, fully transparent, and impartial process. And then paragraph 7 reads, whereas the creation of a truly independent citizens redistricting commission devoid of political motivation or partisanship will help to ensure a transparent, fair, and accurate legislative and congressional district process. And then it continues on. Yet when I searched the internet, I found that voters, not politicians, who supplied the information pamphlets provided in the council packet, lo and behold, I found that indeed it was not partisan, but very much so a one-sided political endeavor. So my question for the community at large is, why are we allowing partisan politics to enter into our city government? According to the MML fact sheet, It states that don't use city or village funds, municipal-owned office space, or other property to expressly advocate a vote for or against a candidate or ballot question. Expressly advocate means to state support for the passage or defeat of a ballot question. Thank you.
Hello all, it's me again, Cindy from the Albion District Library. And this is just a friendly request as both, a local business owner, runner, ED, whatever I think the role is, a little bit of everything for those of us in that role, but also as a taxpayer. And sometimes I cannot be here physically, but I do stream the meetings from home and whatever, and I would encourage you, I know it's things get sort of lost in all the fun and adventures that happen during city council, but I would beg you, please do actually speak into your mics, because sometimes it's very difficult to hear the conversations on the recording.
Is this an agenda item concern?
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, I forgot. This is not an agenda item. Well, sort of. It's regarding the agenda, because if I asked at the end, then it would be too late to ask.
Okay.
Sorry, but it does.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
My apologies.
Thank you. I know you're good.
Mayor, Council, Haley, welcome to the City Council meetings. After many drafts to address this matter, and at the urging of very learned friends to tone down my comment, I have arrived with this. If this council's new so-called code of ethics is such a wonderful thing, why do you feel it necessary to hide it under the disguise of an ordinance to provide a process for the sale of surplus real property? If any citizen were to take the time to review this paper, they would come to the same conclusion as myself and others, that it seems to have been written by none other than Judge Roy Bean, as it reads like a piece of Old West justice from the days of Tombstone. You only allow citizens 3 minutes to speak, which is nowhere close to the time it will take to expose the flaws of this document. So if you'd like to take the time to openly discuss this matter with me and my fellow citizens, we would be happy to oblige. With a bit over 5 weeks left to Election Day, I would strongly urge any right thinkers among you to vote down this piece of ridiculousness to save the next council the trouble of having to amend and rewrite it in the future. Thank you. By the way, I am Al Smith, 1209 Adams Street.
Dave Atchison, 108 West Erie Street. First, I want to thank the people that stood up and made presentations on the ballot measures. They were very good, clear explanations. They seem to be unbiased. And Mr. Dunklin, I appreciate your words. And there's not much that I could see that people would object to or vote against those ballot measures. So my issue is not with the ballot measures themselves, which I think are perfectly fine, and I believe they will pass, which is appropriate. However, the City Council taking an official position, and you're going to pass a resolution saying that City Council says these should pass. That troubles me, and it does set a precedent for using your position and city resources that all the taxpayers pay for, and you're in a position to represent all the citizens. And I think it's a good idea to advise and bring people in to discuss things and make a presentation. But I think you've definitely crossed the line when you take an official position on something that is on the ballot. I think the citizens elect you to stick to government business. I think that's inherently City of Albion business, and the charter says that normally resolutions will restrict themselves to. That'll be inherent city business. So I'm not sure why this is needed to do this. I know that you did not do the same thing for all ballot measures, but these in particular. And again, I have no objection with the ballot measures. They seem perfectly fine. But when you take the position that the city of Albion supports it, I think you've stepped way over the line. I don't think that's very ethical, which leads me into a couple of comments on the ethics ordinance, which I would say that it is somewhat ironic that both items are on the agenda tonight. And I do think it might be wise to table this until you've had a chance to go back over that ordinance and do a better job writing it. There are a tremendous number of issues with it. It's fatally flawed. You're setting yourself up, and basically what you're saying is any voting bloc can pass judgment on any other member of the council. You can fine them up to $500, and you can petition the governor for their removal. And all you really need is those 4 votes. You even spell out the fact that there are no rules of evidence, and it's basically who's ever presiding gets to determine what's going to be considered, what can't be considered, how it's going to be considered. And so it's a dangerous slope you're going down. When you get into taking people and you're going to decide whether a criminal offense has occurred because somebody accused somebody of something, we have a justice system that does that. So you should at least extract yourself from that mess and leave the criminal prosecutions up to the justice system. I think the true purpose is just to muzzle people that are in opposition and shut them down.
So any further public comment on the agenda? Okay.
Amy DePraise again from the EDC. I just wanted to make comment on the Comco. You've got 2 approvals before you tonight for Comco and 1 for Greenwell. Those are 2 companies we've been working with for some time and that have bought property in the Albion Industrial Park, and the EDC would be supportive of their applications. That's it.
Hi, Eric Tobin, 409 West Ash. Just wanted to speak to get on the item that I have on the agenda, or not that I have on the agenda, but that's related to my property. Just wanted to also continue to get the support of the council and hope that we can resolve this by the next council meeting. Thank you.
Is there any further public comment this evening on agenda items? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the various session meetings listed?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say yes. Yes. Are there any opposed? Okay. We've approved the session minutes listed. Items for individual discussion. Item A, request approval for medical marijuana grower license for Comco LLC. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Do you want to?
Sure.
Would you like? Attorney Harkness.
So the first one that you've got before you tonight is the grower license for Comco. This one came to us. I think we went back. There were some things that were missing or needed to be fixed. The business took care of those. They fixed all the deficiencies, and so they passed all the checks with the various departments, and we're recommending approval.
Okay. Are there any questions or discussion from council? When these are approved, how many remaining licenses will be left?
Assuming all the licenses that have applications that have either been approved or are pending, we'll have 14 out of 20 used.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Barnes and Councilmember Brown.
From a legal standpoint, again, I would like to hear from Chief Kip.
We've done research as requested per the ordinance on this, and they passed all the background checks that were required. So beyond that, I have no other statements as far as it goes.
Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So the business plan, who gets that and who reviews that and determines whether or not it's a viable business plan?
I will say that I review it. Now, whether or not it's a viable business plan,
okay,
that's a sliding scale, I guess. But I look at them to make sure that it's what I would call a genuine business plan and not just kind of window dressing. They actually have outlined things like projections and how they're going to operate their business, and sometimes you get these applications and they try to do the like a shortcut and say we plan to operate our business in compliance with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, which is absurd. And that's when we say no, you got to go back and actually show us how you're going to operate your business, show us how you're going to set it up, how you're going to staff it, all those things. And so we make sure it has all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I know that it's reviewed by all the departments that have an interest in parts of that. You review it. I know if it's going to the DEC for the kind of property purchase, so they've reviewed it. And there's also going to be a state review as well.
It's reviewed by public safety for the backgrounds. It's reviewed by finance to check and see if there's any tax deficiencies. It's reviewed by planning to make sure that they've got the appropriate, they meet the zoning requirements and that they meet the distance requirements for the various facilities that we prohibited from being within a certain distance of. I do a comprehensive review in my office. Planning Commission does their review, and then after the council approves it, they also have a state review. So.
Okay. Is there any further discussion from council? If not, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French, Barnes,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes, we have approved item A, which is the approval of medical marijuana grower license for Comco LLC. Item B, request approval for medical marijuana license for, I guess, an additional one, for processor license for Comco LLC. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion from council?
This is just the exact same company, except they did a second license for processor. They again met all the requirements after some back and forth, and all the department heads have signed off, so we're recommending approval of that one as well.
Okay. Is there any further discussion from council? Councilmember Barnes.
Chief Kip.
Same as the last license, it was reviewed by public safety and they met all the requirements.
Is there any discussion from council? If not, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Barn?
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French, Barnes,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes, we've approved the issuance of a processor license for Comco. Item C, request approval for medical marijuana grower license for Greenwell Bio Medicinals LLC. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is there any?
So this is yet another grower license. Again, we had some back and forth with the business. They ultimately presented an acceptable application. All the department heads have reviewed it, signed off on it. We're recommending approval.
Okay, is there any discussion? Councilmember Barnes.
Chief Kip.
Again, this company as well has met all the requirements as required by the ordinance.
Okay. Okay. Is there any further discussion? If not, ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
French, Barnes,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
and Mayor Brown.
Yes, we have approved item C, which is the issuance of a grower license to Greenwell Biomedicals LLC. Item D, request approval contract with Latanya Rufus as city manager. Motion. Second.
Of course.
Okay. And the council approved an initiation committee of Council Brown, Council French, and on last Thursday for about 3 hours. We all had Ms. Ruth's phone in, and she, after the next day, we were able to finalize the contract. And do you want to speak to?
Is most version?
No, I think it's in the.
So the assistant city attorney and the committee put together a proposed offer based upon the conversation conversations that occurred that night between the committee and Rufus. I think there was some back and forth with the committee, but ultimately we came to a final document. Ms. Rufus has approved it, the committee has approved it, and I think that's it, unless there's any questions.
Yeah, are there any questions? It was unanimous for the committee, and it was actually went really well, actually. So, any questions?
Did she have any contract?
There were questions about staggered severance based on the months in, but then there was a flat severance benefits. All being equal, pretty fair. So we were able to include some more information about. We I don't think what else we included in there.
Most of it, I mean, a large portion of the contract was very similar to Van Mitchell's contract that were removed. The severance package is still a standard which has increases
Tied to it.
Tied to evaluations. There's 0.0 or there's some questions about working with the council informed, things like that. Just like in the previous contract, if for some reason that there's a discharge or whatever required in order to get the severance, there has to be a release of liability against the city. But everything else is pretty much the same as Manager Mitchell's contract. There were some small changes here and there, nothing really substantive, but Ms. Rufus was okay with all of them.
Yeah. Councilmember Spicer, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. And that start date for Ms. Rufus?
I think the 8th.
15th is what she told me.
Oh, she was right.
Yeah, she'll be here on the 8th, but she plans on starting work full-time on the 15th.
Okay.
October 15th. When?
October 15th, 15th.
18th.
And she will.
The agreement says the 8th, so if that needs to change.
It does?
Okay.
You might want to ask her that, but that's the conversation I had with her on Saturday. So.
Okay. Is there, Councilmember Burns?
Was there any conversation on the selection vote at all? Seeing that it wasn't unanimous, was she concerned about that at all?
Oh, we just discussed the contract, yeah. Okay. So you said there was a question about the 15th and the 18th.
15th or 8th.
15th or 8th. Do we probably make an amendment just to say on? Yeah. So is there an intent to clarify for purposes that they do relative when us? Is there just to make sure? Question about if it's the 8th or the 15th. So, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay. So we've amended the main motion to make that. Is there discussion on the contract? Okay. Seeing none, I'd ask for a vote, please.
Councilmember Spicer?
Yes.
French? Barnes?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Lawler?
Yes.
And Mayor Brown?
Yes. We've approved the contract with our new city manager, LaTanya Rufus. Item E, discussion ordinance. It's an ethics ordinance. This is a discussion. So, you want to start off?
Sure. So first off, I have to advise there's a format so that we can avoid reinventing the wheel, and it looks like while everything from that template got changed, the last ordinance that we did for the city was the surplus property. And the one thing we got was ethics ordinance.
And we're not approving it tonight. Yeah.
Right, it's just a discussion. So I mean, but anyway, it's an ethics ordinance. As you can see from the body of it, it's all about ethics. The section number that's designated is a new section number that's created separate from the surplus property thing. That was an oversight on my office's behalf. But what you've got in front of you is a breakdown of, if you recall from this council meeting, council went through and identified areas that the council found to be of importance from actually it's 4 municipalities that had their own ethics ordinance, and so it's a blend of all 4 of those. If you look at all 4 of those ethics ordinances, and I want to say it was Adrian, Charlotte, I think Battle Creek,
Hammond.
Almost all of them had essential terms for acting in compliance with the law, full disclosure, full conflict of interest with finances, missed public resources, representation of private interest, things like that. And so, as you look through, you'll see that I included everything you identified as key. The enforcement penalty provision was modeled after one of the other cities. One of them really didn't have anything. One of them just kind of said, well, the council is responsible for enforcing it on their own. Another one had a really detailed process of having actually the city attorney do the enforcement, which obviously can be problematic if you're dealing with investigating your own employee. So I think the one that made the most sense is the city council essentially policing itself, but having guidelines to do that by. And so that's what you've got in front of you. It outlines the process of how to address that. And as you can see in the back, there's some violations, fine, bigger fine, a big fine with but the regulation that would require a fine already did something that was just negligent or improper or something like that. I mean, the body was petitioned for something very significant, like the governor removing somebody from office. That's a pretty extreme, and those instances are few and far between. But it gives you that option to seek that, and then it also provides an appellate review such that anybody ordered to do ordered to pay a fine can basically appeal it to the board. If anybody's got an issue with any other that's supposed to stop fine, they can appeal it to the circuit. So that is basically what you've got. I'm happy to answer any questions. Next time.
Well, I want to thank the council and as well, so we had a special edition of this, and prior to something like that been done, this is the first in my knowledge of the city ordinance. So I think that a good thing, and I'm so willing to work through this. I think it's fair. I think it's similar to, I think I mentioned during the study session, that it's a similar process in place for recalls actually in the state for local elected officials. If the election commission of the county approves that, you can always appeal it to the court. So it's not something that's out of the ordinary. Are there any other questions from council? Councilmember Barnes.
Seeing this is for discussion, I'd like to have some comments concerning some of the sections, and I would like them to go into the official record, because this is only discussion. It may come back again in a subcommittee or something for us to really take a look. I would ask that Section B, compliance with the law entirely, because that's really a criminal prosecution. Respectful to us. I think we're order and charter. I think the respect for this situation would be ambiguous, not clear, unsure. I think preparation for public meetings is really not an ethical issue. Full disclosure, I think that the limitation consideration of financial of interest only, specifically include from bingo to table or home motion where that member or their immediate family member is subject to a motion. And 8, every day interest. This is against independence of boards and commissions. I just think that immediate family shouldn't be allowed to serve or appointed by the, and approved by the council members. Number K, positive workplace. I would say expand the scope to include protected individual, to include any resident of Albion. Enforcement and penalties. Eliminate that and start over. This is the ethics issue.
I have a question about.
One thing. Are you?
No, I got a couple more.
Okay, I'm letting him finish in the moment.
Section N2, to whose satisfaction? I think that's totally ambiguous and dubious. I think that should be totally discussed before we go into that situation. I mean, whose satisfaction would have to be satisfied? N3, these deadlines are really commitment. Be accused, then 30 days for you to be charged, then finally notified within 3 days to answer. It could cause for delays, penalties, and some room. Section N, 6, determination of what we to consider. That's more for somebody trained in judicial system, not council members, in my opinion. Section N9, rules of evidence and a modified civil procedure should apply. In some of these situations, like a complaint, and there's in the middle of somewhere where there rules and situation was no violation, did it happen? Section 8 and 14. Sanctions should be to censor in all but the most serious cases involving criminal conviction. Section O, appellate review. Eliminated, the council should not have the authority to impose monetary fines. Nor implementation and evidence of council.
Council Member Barnes, but I missed the what he had expressed his concern under letter K.
I think you include the public in general, but the section title has to do with the workplace in particular. So I think the nature of that particular section limited it to the municipal workplace. Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay. Do you have anything else to add?
No,
so,
go ahead.
No, so basically, if there's no other additions or changes, but this would come back to us for first reading. Okay.
Unless there's other feedback. I mean, my thought would be put it on as a discussion first reading for the 15th, so that if the council has more feedback between now and then, we can always make any amendments that are needed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I mean, and the only other thing I would add to council, a lot of section N as it relates to enforcement penalties is tailored in a way for a lay, what I refer to as a lay body, to do a very informal hearing. That's why it's written the way it's written. And I suspect it was done that way by the other municipalities so as not to make it over, I guess, I don't want to say that's not the right way not to make it.
It's not.
Judicial proceeding.
I think ultimately, form that really, we create our own rules, and so then it's actually incumbent on us to enforce our own rules. And this aids in that, and also each other accountable. So, there's no further discussion. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you again. Okay, update on 608 Austin Ave demolition. Director Tracy.
John Tracy, Director of Planning, Building, Code Enforcement. 608 Austin Ave. We originally had the assessment group building for asbestos. 2/3 of the building at that time were in too poor shape to actually get into. 1/3 of the building was assessed, and a company was hired to abate that. Last week, the company went in to abate it, which has been a couple months since the assessment. Since the original assessment, with the abatement group going in, one of their employees got about 7 foot into the building, and then the floor let go underneath them, and fortunately wasn't hurt. So they will not be abating the 1/3 that originally was thought to be sturdy enough to have asbestos removed. So at this time, there's Bolo is being contacted, the contractor that gave the initial bid for the demolition of the structure, to readjust for the demolition with the other third, which is their bid will wind up coming back in a little bit higher, undoubtedly, because of the asbestos having to be dealt with differently on their part. I don't really foresee it being any different than what it's had been, since we don't have the cost of the other portion, the 1/3. So should have that back in here within the next few days. And then as soon as that comes in, we can, if it's council's choice, we can go forward with having the contract signed and getting the building torn down by the contractor that was going to take the rest of it down. So we're going to cross some problems, unforeseen, but still needs to come down one way or the other. And as I say, I don't think we're going to see any higher amount total. If there is, definitely let you know before we go any further with it.
Okay, Councilman Brown.
I'd like to thank you for your diligent work. I know it can be tough. I've contacted the land bank, and there's a great interest in that corridor, and that building was mentioned when I talked with Krista today, so I'm just excited to see you continue doing what you're doing. I'm just asking for your professional advice when you do come back and let us know which route to go.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? Are there any questions from council? Go ahead.
If I may, if the cost doesn't exceed what was originally projected on, or what we had to bid for the asbestos removal by the abatement company, if the cost comes back not being over what the abatement would have cost, what the demolition, this council wants us to move forward with it, unless it's more. The approximate amount for the demolition of the building was $18,000 plus another $4,000 for removal of the asbestos in there. So if it comes back not exceeding $22,000, would the council prefer for us just to move forward or bring it back before council?
I would think that we would bring it back before council.
Bring it back?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Phone business. Thank you, John.
Thank you. We'll move on to discussion of property adjacent to 409 West Ash Street.
I've been working with the assessor, the city attorney, Director Tracy, and Eric, trying to make sure this works out for both Eric and for the city. There's some complications in how the property is transferred and how it's divided up, but I think we've worked all of that out, and it should be on the agenda for the next meeting to approve the way it needs to be done.
Including the surveying issues.
Yep.
Okay. Councilmember Brown.
I have a couple questions. Is there a public hearing needed for this at the next meeting?
Yes.
So, okay, there is a public hearing needed. And does a legal description of the property exist right now?
There's a legal description that was created by the previous assessor. I don't know if that stands up without a actual survey done of the property, because it wasn't based on a survey of the property, it was just based on map coordinates.
So it's a guess.
So does, sorry,
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so, what I heard you say is that you're not sure if it meets the standards. Has anybody asked, or like are we?
It was not. My understanding is, and the chief, excuse me, the interim manager, and correct me if I'm wrong, but normally a legal description is based upon a survey.
Right.
In this particular situation, it looks like the former assessor, basically put an abbreviated one together based on map points, not based on a survey. So the problem is if you record it, it may not actually be the exact legal description.
Right. And I've had this discussion with our current assessor, and that's pretty much what he told me as well, that he could give us the points on the map, but when it comes down to the actual dividing up the property, it has to be done by a surveyor. They can give us the four corners of the property, but if you divide it in half, that doesn't divide it in half, which is the requirement. I think we can work all of that out, and I think all of that property can go to Mr. Tobin, but that all has to be written out correctly, and I think the city attorney and the assessor and myself are all on the same page along with Mr. Tobin, and we can move forward with this at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you. Quick question. At the last meeting, I believe we discussed that property was sold, that there would be some access issues. Did you deal with that in this talking with Mr. Tobin, or did you just say we're not going to worry about accessing from that side?
Correct. Yeah. Since the council's decided to abandon that property, there are other accesses to property that can be created. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that update. We'll move on now. We'll move forward now to request to approve resolution number 2018-22, resolution supporting essentially ballot proposal 2. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I want to thank the presentations tonight that were very interesting and concise. I know a lot of these things can become quite technical, but in explaining why this is here, I just want to bring some clarity, and I'm going to ask the city attorney to chime in as well. So the city operates under the authority of the state, but we do have the authority to essentially approve non-binding resolutions. The concern was, there was a couple concerns raised. I'm going to kind of answer those very quickly. The first was the recreation millage. Now, the city asked voters to take that on, and so that's something where we, because it was our millage, we can't speak for or against it. And I made that really clear during that time, that the elected officials and appointed officers of the city could not engage in any campaigning because that was a local city of Albion millage. So that's why we didn't say anything or get involved with that, and that's why there was a separate community group to approve that. The question about getting involved with ballot initiatives. So just off the top of my head, I think there are multiple communities and types of governing bodies in the state have taken a stance on this, so including the city of Battle Creek. They approved a similar resolution a couple of weeks ago. East Lansing School Board, which is not even a local municipality, took a position on it. The Marquette County Board of Commissioners and even the Meridian Township Board took a stance on that. Our attorney represents that other community, but this is emanating from us. So the question is, there's also a concern about precedence. So the city, this happens few and far between that the city actually takes a stance on issues. The last time I can remember was actually during the annexation campaign. The annexation was a school district ballot issue. So it wasn't city related to that, but there was a vote. It was a vote on the ballot, and the council did pass a resolution relative to that. So there's nothing unethical or out of the ordinary about it. Actually, we only normally do this with issues of great public significance. And this has to do, both of these ballot issues have to go, will go straight to the heart of our democratic values. One being, do we have access to voting? And then two, do our votes matter when we do vote? Because gerrymandering tamps down the significance of our voting. So I think that's it. So basically, just to summarize, the recreation, we couldn't get involved because that was our millage. Other cities, townships, counties across the state have done similar, and it's not a break with precedent because we have done it in the past. It's usually only happening with issues of great public concern to residents, and so that's why we've decided to, hopefully, we decide to weigh in on these issues. So is there any discussion from council this evening? Councilmember Barnes.
I would just like to ask our attorney, is there a definitive answer from a legal opinion concerning this? With us being a nonpartisan body, and this is sending, to me, a message on how people should vote with a recommendation from this nonpartisan body.
So, I think there's two things there. One is, can the council take a position? And then there's kind of a background question as to whether or not there's an issue as it relates to the Campaign Finance Act. And what you find in the Campaign Finance Act is that it does provide that elected officials can basically take a position on an issue of policy. Now, I think it's vague as to whether or not that means simply expressing an individual opinion or expressing that position as a body through a resolution. But I think what's important in this particular case is, and this is a very fact-specific issue, and I might not have the same opinion if this issue comes up again, but under different circumstances. But in this particular case, the question that was posed to my office was, is this a violation of the Campaign Finance Act because staff time is being used to prepare and distribute and do all kinds of things like that with these particular resolutions. But in this particular case, there wasn't any extra staff time that was used to prepare or distribute these. They're being distributed in the same manner, pursuant to the same duties that a clerk or a deputy clerk would otherwise be distributing the packet. And in fact, the MML sets out, identifies an exception where, as it relates to, for example, the minutes, when a clerk records minutes of a meeting and say it's about a particular issue like this and then distributes it, it's not a violation of the Campaign Finance Act. And on the same token, when they prepare an agenda and distribute the agenda, it's not a violation of the Campaign Finance Act. So it's my opinion that in this particular limited situation, and coupled with the particular issues that it's addressing, I don't think it's a violation of the Act. I don't think the council is overstepping its bounds. I don't think that this particular city is alone or unique in taking this on. Now, again, I'm going to stress to the council, this isn't going to apply in every situation. And, I mean, if for example, if it had been the clerk drafting these drafting these resolutions, I would probably be telling you something different. But based on the facts that I have, I don't believe that there's any issue with the council adopting these particular resolutions.
And I will add, in this case, these are ballot initiatives, but there are other instances where the city will weigh in on certain things that are ballot initiatives that aren't. Sometimes there's state legislative issues. In 2016, we approved a resolution to strengthen the income tax withholding, asked the state to do that. We were asked this year earlier to weigh in on a House bill relative to civil asset forfeiture. We decided not to get involved with that. So, yeah, this is normal, and I've been on the council for a while, so you have experience. You can notice and see that these things are appropriate and there's no ethical issues. We're usually just weighing in on things that are of great public concern to residents. So, is there any further discussion from the council? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Lawler?
Yes.
Spicer?
Yes.
French? And Mayor Brown.
Yes. Request approval resolution number 2018-23, resolution supporting, this is proposal 3. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? And Attorney Harkness, the same legal opinion would weigh in here, correct?
Yeah, can we just adopt my comments by reference from the
Yes. Okay, is there any discussion from council this evening? Okay, seeing none, I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Reed?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Lawler?
Yes.
Spicer?
Yes.
French? Barnes? And Mayor Brown.
Did he vote?
Barnes?
Yes.
And Mayor Brown.
Yes, we've approved both resolutions. Thank you. Item J, discussion and first reading or approval of ordinance number 2018-9, zoning ordinance amendments. Is John, you want to speak to that? Okay.
Actually, John would probably be better to discuss it.
Director Tracy.
Recently, council had approved an ordinance to amend Chapter 22 to allow for provisioning centers, two licenses to be specific. So what you have before you is ordinance 2018-9. This is an ordinance that amend Chapter 30 of the zoning ordinance, or zoning code, by amending sections 30-04, the definitions, amend highway service district B3, industrial district M1P, and industrial district M2 and M2P to address state licensed medical marijuana provisioning centers pursuant to Chapter 22, Article 5 of the City of Albion Code of Ordinances. This was brought before the Planning Commission, had a public hearing, and the Planning Commission had reviewed and has recommended that the City Council pass the ordinance.
Is there any discussion from council this evening or questions? This is essentially to help us implement the policy that we
This
decided.
is basically just changing the sections of zoning ordinance so they align with what the Code of Ordinance.
Okay, seeing no discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote. First reading.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Lawler?
Yes.
Spicer?
Yes.
French? Barnes?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
And Mayor Brown.
Yes. We've passed the first reading of the zoning ordinance amendments as indicated in the packet. Are there any future agenda items from the council this evening? Councilmember Reed and Attorney Harkness.
Next week, meeting on the 15th, Mr. Bonner is asking to be put on with his group of young people for Red Ribbon Week.
Okay.
For a presentation, he's also requesting a proclamation acknowledging Red Ribbon Week.
Okay. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. At our next meeting, just asking that the public hearing for the Ash Street property be put on the agenda, and that whatever decision council needs to make at that time be added as well, so we can get this done.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any other future agenda? Oh, I'm sorry. Attorney Harkins, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I apologize.
One, discussion / first reading of the ethics ordinance.
Okay.
And then number two, just for discussion, the update of our Unicode or some other system.
Yes.
Because it's actually starting to get problematic in that my office is starting to get calls, and other government officials or other attorneys will ask, well, this is what your code says. It's like, well, no, that's what it said 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could get that updated, just so we can, or at least have a discussion about updating that, so we can have a current set of ordinances.
Yes. Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. At our last meeting, Clerk Domingo mentioned that the Housing Commission director had reached out to council in order to do a presentation. I don't know if we probably need to look into when she was proposing to do that. If we could do that, please. Thank you.
Okay. Interim Manager Kip.
We're going to need to approve also trick-or-treating for Halloween or whichever day we choose is. It'll be after that meeting.
Okay, trick-or-treating. Are there any other future agenda items? Okay. That might, well, I'm going to,
Okay.
yeah, I'm going to say it on the council member.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember French did indicate that he would not be in attendance this evening. Do I have a motion to excuse Councilmember French?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay. Public comments. Persons addressing the City Council, we ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. We ask that you observe proper decorum, state your name and address, and then we also want to let you know that the Council will not respond to direct questions during public comment. If we have any comments, we can do that during council member comments. So we will not respond to direct comments. Good evening.
Yes, to the council. I'm Vivian Davis, 901 Huntington. This is just an announcement regarding the candidates forum that's going to be on the 18th of October at the high school from 5:30. We have the Michigan State Extension representatives, Harmony and Eric, will be here to talk about the ballot initiatives. At 6 o'clock, we will have city candidates will have the forum, and at 7 o'clock is the county and state. So mark your calendars, and if you have notified someone the letter that we received, let us know that you're going to be in attendance, and we will make sure that we have space available for everyone. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment this evening?
Becky McKinney from Parma, Michigan, and I wanted to thank you for your support this evening. And I did, if I'm in order to just respond to a concern expressed about voters, not politicians, if that's all right. We have heard the charge that we're a very partisan group, and I wanted to correct that misimpression because we have very strongly partisan people, members of our group, but it's both sides. And what makes us nonpartisan is that this ballot initiative is designed to benefit neither party. And so because it does not benefit either party, it is very much a nonpartisan group. And again, we thank you for your hearing us this evening.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment this evening?
Thank you, and I agree. NAACP is a nonpartisan organization, has been for 109 years. Council, come to you tonight to invite you to NAACP 58 Freedom Front Banquet. This is a fundraiser event that we have once a year, and this year it's October the 20th. What I would do, if I'm allowed to step forward, share with you, I have a letter for each one of you, and this is your invitation. So please,
Thank you.
wash the dishes for them, I have to pay $30. Ain't got that fun. Thank you, Mr. Duncan.
Thank you.
And you're all invited. The door's open at 5:45. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment this evening? Oh, yeah.
Jock Harris, 712 North Albion Street, speaking on behalf of Albion Youth Football. As of late, I don't know if any of the council have caught drift of what we're trying to do here in Albion. Our city recreation department didn't put a youth football team together, and a bunch of us came together and put a youth football team in the area. We've been getting a lot of pushback from the recreation department. Strongly feel that that is because of the organization that we chose to work with. Previously, before we did this, we ventured out to the recreation department and informed them that we would like to work with them. They informed us that it wouldn't be enough kids in the city of Albion to do it. We put together a free camp, had 150 total kids out doing that camp with us. This past weekend at the Festival of Forks, we put together a football game at Albion High School. Marshall gave us the go-ahead to use the fields as much as we need to for practice and for games. We were able to use the buses one time, but changes happened and we were not able to use the city vehicles. I was really upset with that, seeing that there were other organizations that used it previously. Again, the recreation department, they gave us a ton of pushback doing this. They initially told us that it would be $55 a day to use any of the public parks for us to hold practices or games or any other sort. I got a phone call yesterday, and I'm not going to mention the organization, but it's another organization that I'm looking to partner with to bring another sport to the city of Albion, since the recreation department doesn't want to. But that organization said that they were given the go-ahead to use 3 public parks in the city of Albion for free. So for me, seems like they're sort of biased towards it. I know the recreation department has told me that whatever it is that we do with, or they do with New Level Sports, it will be about business. And I told him to make it about the kids, and he said it's about business when he deals with them. So I hope that the council take this under consideration. I personally am going to continue to stand for our youth and continue to bring sports to the city of Albion as much as I can, as well as other avenues to bring educational skills back to the city of Albion as well.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment this evening?
Hello, my name is John Dunklin. I stay at 1203 2nd Street, Albion, Michigan. I am here today to ask about the truth about Precinct 1. Every time I ask council anything, I get this from Mayor Brown. I quote, "I cannot answer at this time," unquote. It's been 24 months, 2 weeks, 5 days, 8 hours, no response. No verbal response. I ask that my precinct manager respond to this urgent matter at this time. I have not received any correspondence, either phone, email, text, or fax. I have not received the respect as a taxpaying citizen from Albion by the mayor, the council, or the city manager. The concerns that I have addressed from this podium on live TV: no street sweeping in the first precinct, no lights, no tree trimming, dangerous potholes, and no disabled sidewalks for disabled people. And to this day, it's still no response. Thank you.
Is there any further public comment this evening? Okay. Do you have Commissioner Tompkins? Yeah. And I will say that if you go over 3 minutes per council rules, we can allow that because you're
I understand exactly
from another government entity. So.
Well, Mr. Mayor, council members, Interim Manager Kip, not very long, much longer, but still to that point. Deputy Clerk Snyder, good evening. Residents of the City of Albion and those folks watching this evening, good evening. My name is Gary Tompkins, and I'm your County Commissioner. It's always great to be with you folks each and every month. I'll be very brief because I know that the time is going this evening. If you remember back in August of 2017, I attended the Michigan County Commissioners Conference in Washington, D.C. I took that opportunity because I think for us, we've got to make sure that we have a voice no matter if it's at the county level, the state level, or at the federal level. So again, I'm always taking those opportunities. Well, interesting enough, to this afternoon, I had a White House briefing call this afternoon with officials from the White House Department of Intergovernmental Affairs and reps from the United States Trade Representative Office. The briefing was regarding the just announced new trade agreement between U.S., Mexico, and Canada that was just announced. Based on what I have seen in the breakdown, the changes seem to be very positive, and for not only our farmers, which we live in a rural district, the 7th District is a rural district that I represent, especially as it relates to dairy, but also with wheat, but also manufacturing potentially. And I know Albion obviously is looking at all these potential possibilities as additional manufacturing opportunities. And one of the things that are required as it relates to auto manufacturing is requiring that 75% of auto content to be made in North America, and this one's more important, is 40 to 45% of auto content to be made by workers earning at least $16 an hour. As you notice, for many, many years, we lost factory jobs here in the United States because many of them moved away to very, very low-wage countries. Well, with this opportunity, it's going to make the United States much more competitive. And when I'm thinking about that, I'm also thinking about the city of Albion because, again, those opportunities may be available for future manufacturing situations here in Albion. So any time that I can sit at the table is a good thing because otherwise, as you well know, we'll be on the menu if we're not at the table. So I need to make sure I take advantage of that. So I'm just updating you folks as regarding it's always important for the 7th District to be at the forefront and also Calhoun County. So I think it's a good positive thing moving forward. Just real quickly, my monthly newsletter is available. Most of you folks do get it. If you're not on the email list and you'd like to, shoot an email to me, and I'll certainly get it to each and every month. Hard copies will be available at the Albion District Library starting tomorrow, October 2nd. It's a great resource to know what's going on in and around the 7th District. In the newsletter this month, on page 3, I break down the Calhoun County Health Department budget for fiscal year 19. As you'll notice, there was about a $938,000 reduction in the health department budget, and that's due to the transitional point of the school nurse program, which some schools have opted to get out of the program because they were doing some reorganization of that. There were 6 reductions in positions. However, nothing else within the health department system was affected, so you won't see any services that are affected. It was only relative to the school wellness program, nurse program. On page 4 and 5, as we know, politics can always be serious, but in this case, this month I took an opportunity to actually make it a little bit more fun. So on page 4, you'll notice it's kind of the Festival of the Forks in pictures from my vantage point, and then page 5 also from the Blair Festival. And I will tell you, the Festival of the Forks was a wonderful. I had an opportunity to be downtown not only Friday night but also all day Saturday, and I can tell you, you've got great people here in the city of Albion. It was great to be around all day to be able to do that. So that's always a positive thing. And then finally, as we know, 'tis the season, correct? Here we are at election time already again. Well, in all seriousness, though, I will tell you, it's been the last 2 years, close to 2 years, it's been a distinct honor and privilege to represent the 20-plus thousand residents of the 7th District. And you guys well know, during that time, I've attended countless meetings and events within the 7th District, especially here in the city of Albion, 480 events to be exact, all so that I could listen to the concerns and challenges to not only that you folks have as local units of government, but also the residents in the 7th District and the city of Albion. We've had a lot of successes. We've also got a lot of work to do. So moving forward, I think there's a clear choice to be had on November 6th, and that is between taking a different path or continuing on the path to reelect somebody who's strong, principled, and effective, and who's working for everybody in the 7th District, no matter where you live, because you folks are important. Folks are important in the city of Albion. Your folks are important across the 7th District. So with that being said, let's hope to keep that momentum going. And November 6th, I would certainly appreciate your support. And more importantly, I would appreciate your vote on November 6th because your endorsement will be the most significant, privileged vote that I can get. So thank you very much, and you guys have a great evening, all right? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on now, seeing no further public comment. Oh. Wait.
Bob Dunklin, President of the Albion branch of NAACP, 707 Huntington Boulevard. I'll stand at this point to stand with Johnny Dunklin in reference to 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Street. If you can't do the streets, do the sidewalks. We're dealing with taxation without representation here. So I urge you to take a look at that community.
Thank you. Seeing no further public comment, we'll move on to City Manager report.
As this is probably the last time I'll be sitting in this chair, at least for the near future, hopefully, I would just like to thank the mayor and council for placing their confidence in me and allowing me to serve in this position. I know everything hasn't gone completely smooth, and definitely been a learning experience for me. But it's always an honor to serve in this capacity, and thank you for putting your trust in me.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. We'll move now to council member comments. Councilmember Barnes.
Well, I must admit, Mr. Harris is my cousin with his football program. But he just threw me under the bus. And we just met earlier today, and he gave me the schedule for this week's bus. I've been trying to help Mr. Harris and this league. They are facing some challenges. They were facing a financial challenge. Myself and another Albion citizen went to an organization that we belonged to and captured the money that they needed. Also, I contacted Chief Kip, who is more than willing to work with me with my proper license, my proper policy and procedure for using the vehicles, and I said I would volunteer to drive those vehicles under policy and procedure. Also, I went to our recreation department and I talked to our recreation director, who did allow me to use the scoreboard because of some challenges that their league officials had with broken equipment. And I'm not throwing him under the bus, don't get me wrong. I'm going to continue to work with him, but I wanted both sides of the situation to be heard. I love him. We'll be together after the meeting. He could have told me he was going to come down here and throw me under the bus. My final comment is a physical one to take me 5 seconds. This is for Lynn Reed. She doesn't have a Spartan hat. She's a Spartan graduate. And this all came from the game, the hat, the cup, the finger, and... The big finger. I don't mean it like that. And for Chief Kip, also a Spartan. Go green.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may address Mr. Harris, I just have 2 questions for him.
Okay. We try to, you can ask the questions and then we'll get answers. I want to make sure that we're fair because,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to know how many children do you have participating in your program, and how many spectators can you give me roughly that do attend, as far as the parents and things like that come to see their children play. As far as this program, Mayor and Council, I think it's a really good program because it does help the mother of who they represent, the Long Live Lonnie. It helps her and Lionel's father heal, to see a legacy to continue in their child's name. So I think this is a very good program. And also from a city council, Albion community resident, it takes kids off the street. It starts them early to get their minds transformed into not just hanging out and doing whatever the streets is doing to not let the streets capture them. So I was going to ask about the van use, and I thank Mr. Barnes for stepping up and definitely trying to help them get where they need to go, and hopefully that whatever you do and whoever you collaborate with, you have the opportunity to continue with these kids and continue to use places that is probably not the football field at the high school, but somewhere to let these kids practice is getting them off the street. And a lot of these kids probably go to the Marshall School, public schools. You know, so it's a very good program, and if you could just answer those two questions after the meeting.
Or we can do it. That's fine.
Okay.
Well, at this current time, we have cheerleading, flag football, and tackle football. We represent about 60 to 70 Albion youth. Also, I want to thank Councilman Barnes as well as Chief Kip. Both of them have worked diligently to make sure we did have transportation for this coming week. We don't need the transportation. New Level Sports have allowed us to use their bus for this week. What was the second question now?
How many spectators, family members, or do you give me like a guesstimate?
Last week's game, since it was a home game, was packed out. I didn't even get an exact count. I was really impressed with it. Please, if you will, look in the article at the Albion College newspaper. I don't know that name. Yes. And for last week's game, we actually had to have parents transport us. We weren't able in time. Mr. Barnes and again, Chief Kip tried to work with us, but we weren't able to get things done in time. But parents had to drive over. I believe there were about 40 to 50 fans from Albion that came over, and people came from Jackson that attended Albion. It was really nice. And on top of that also, if I can say, since we've started, I know an issue was with New Level Sports with the Recreation Department, but since we've started, to put in perspective, we've been approached by 2 different organizations to join their organization next year. So.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Councilman Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Mr. Harris, I commend you. The work you're doing with our youth is awesome. Awesome. I know there was an issue with the van that was brought to me, not from you, that I addressed with Interim Manager Kip. And during that exchange was recommended, we need a policy regarding the van. We don't have one. So, and I know this is your last meeting in that seat, but I want to put that on council's radar that that's something that we need to address. I mean, so I'll just say this and then I'll be done. The same liability concerns that we have as a city with transporting and making our vans available for use should apply when non-employees ride in parades. And you know, they're not employed with the city, but they're riding in the vehicles, and that same liability should apply. So I'm saying that we need to put a van policy in place. So, thank you.
And if I could just say, the liability is not with the people in the vehicles, it's with the driver of the vehicle being a city employee. So.
Well, maybe it needs to be broader. Thanks.
So, and I'm going to clarify, so thanks for all the comments. We appreciate the wonderful work my classmate is doing. That is awesome. But I do want to, just be really direct about this. A resident has come up from Precinct 1 several times and has talked about or has alleged that there's been a lack of concern or empathy or response to the needs of Precinct 1 relative to the streets and the sidewalks. And I want to make very clear that I have talked with Mr. Dunklin many of times, going to his house, have called him, went to the point a couple months ago to set up a meeting, and I roped in the interim manager, roped in Director Tracy, the Director of Planning, Director Jim Leonardson over Public Works, myself, so it was like there was 4, it was me, 3 department heads and Mr. Dunklin, and heard those concerns. So I take constituent relationships and relations very seriously, had that meeting. Also was able to, just as an explanation, the city has 50 miles of road. Our millage only raises in every year about $245,000. And from what I understand, it costs us about $1 million per mile to fix roads in the city. So we're already behind. And the millage we have right now has next year, 2019, and 2020 left in that millage. Next year, at the advice of city directors and staff, it's going to be used to, through grant dollars, help fix Irwin Ave, and then do half of North Street. So there's 1 year outstanding in the millage, 2020. And what I'm really proud of, and like I said, I disagree with the characterization there, is this council approved setting aside those funds in 2020 to do whatever repairs can possibly be done with that remaining $245,000 in 2020. So I voted in support of that. So to characterize, to say that the city has not been listening is really unfair to the council, because the council really stuck its neck out there and decided to pledge its support for those projects for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Street in 2020. So it's really important that when we come and talk, and I know this is, as our commissioner said, it's election season, people want to get gotchas in and all of that, but we are working really hard, and we are concerned and trying to look out for the best interests of all residents, and that's always been my motivation. So it's really important that we represent things in a factual way, that the council approve that. So $245,000, and however that can be used on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Street in Precinct 1. So factual and truthful information is really important. If there are no further comments from council, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.